was thinking about you, like drinking some TV. Felt like I was shrinking. One more sip and here we go. Mama, you're a handful, like drinking and more TV. Say, what was I thinking? Should never have said I went down to the city with a suitcase in my hand, looking for a better deal. I'm trying to find myself a plan, roaming around the streets, filling up some useless time. And if I'd seen her then and there, I would have asked her to be mine. Something to talk about. Ooh, someone to dream about. I'm going home alone with only trouble on my mind. I've roamed the streets 1,000 times, but a girl is hard to find. I've learned my lesson oh so well. There's only one thing I have found. When nothing else remains to do, you should just stick to your own kind. Ooh, something to talk about. Ooh, someone to dream about. Ooh, something to talk about. Ooh, someone to dream about.
What's going on, friends? How we doing tonight? Welcome back to Roleplaying Unlimited Out of Character Tuesday night. We're going to continue here with our interactive talk show with you, the fans. and some of our own inner dialogue here as we discuss the 3 questions of the week. Joining me on the southeast side of the screen, we got the J-Man himself. What's up, brother?
What's going on? Good evening. Hopefully everyone will have a good time here tonight. Have some good questions to ask people, get their opinions on some things. A couple volatile questions, I think, might get some people's blood up a little bit of a known debate on one of these questions, so it's be interesting to see where people go with that.
And joining us on the north central part of the screen, Jason. What's going on? Looks like you got the haircut and the makeup done.
Yep, followed the Muppets' advice. Put on hair and makeup. Wait, is that the way it went? Who knows? Yeah, I'm here.
And of course, on the southwest side of the screen there, Evil Don himself.
Hey guys, how's it going? As Jamin was saying, one of our questions is going to be heated debate. So I would like to say we should save that one for the end, just so that we can end it on a very, very high note for this particular evening. A lot different than from what we do in gaming. So I hope this is entertaining for you guys as well. And please feel free to throw stuff in the chat. We love for this to be as interactive as possible.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say we should go with your question last, Don. Maybe start with Jason's, work into mine, and then finish up with your question for the week. I, of course, am TragicallyHP, otherwise known as Daniel, Game Master of our weekly activities, and we are going to dive right into it. Jason's question, I'm going to go ahead and let you kind of summarize as you like, and then we'll pass that around the table and see what the answers are. And yeah, as Don was saying, anybody here in the chat log that wants to pitch in some answers as well, please do.
Okay, so the question is, when you game, do you like a serious tone to your game where your play is the focus, or do you prefer a relaxed attitude where it's more of a social gathering, kind of a beer and pretzel type thing? Do you want to have the serious story or just the social gathering of gaming? Well, let's start with Justin on that one.
Well, good question. I think I do a kind of a combination of both. I want everybody to kind of be having fun, being relaxed. It's a group of friends getting together to have a good time. And while I do want to focus on a role play and get the story out there and people be immersed into the game experience, trying to force that when people want to have little puns and little side anecdotes that come up during the game, trying to curb those and tell them they can't do that, it kills the vibe, it kills the fun, and so you just let it happen, and it usually lends itself to a better experience in my experience. Trying to always be serious about things is it's kind of a buzzkill, and people don't really enjoy that. So they want to have fun, they want to laugh, they want to have a good time. And sometimes you might have to rein it in a little bit, wrangle them like some cats, and be like, hey, okay, yeah, that was funny, let's get back on task here. And that's fine. I mean, people are like, oh, yeah. So, it's like I said, it's a little bit of both, I think. It's not too silly, but it's not too serious.
I've definitely been guilty of that on more than one occasion on the few times that I have been a player instead of a game master, especially in Justin's games. I don't know what it is. I just get this giddy energy where it's hard for me to focus on the story, and all I want to do is anytime a quote, an incident, or anything comes up that reminds me of something pop culture, I just instantly start going into human quote mode. And on more than one occasion, Justin's like, all right, dude, we're trying to freaking play here. Shut up.
Yeah, when I used to run games, I don't run too many anymore, but when I used to run games, I run them so off the cuff and so improv. And for the most part, I do it mostly for the fun of it, So I don't really have a serious story behind a lot of them. I have events that I have set up, and like a jelly story that holds it all together, you know. But that story is also could be branched off to anything else, as long as I could get my events in. But yeah, for me, off the cuff, you know, funny, silly, as long as we're all having a great time at it. And that's the thing I love about Dan's game, though, is that it is more of a serious game. It's more of a serious storyline. So there is a definite something to latch onto and a definite flavor, you know, to want to play, to want to see what comes next, to see what's next in the storyline. So I will play my characters a lot more serious based upon the fact that I want that story to continue.
Yeah, that's a lot of what I'm talking about. That is that attitude right there. You know, both from the players and the GM perspective. You know, are we playing a game where we're all really involved in the story, or are we trying to get away with cheating at playing Munchkin here while we're drinking beer and eating pretzels? You know, and there's that fine line in between. And some games, you know, your game master or host or whatever you want to call it sets your tone, and it's like, is this going to be a more serious where we're here just as much for the story and rolling the dice as we are for ad-libbing and creating our characters' personas, you know? And those are the differences in there where I think there's a fine line between them, yet there's a whole world in between the two of them, you know? And I like to play both, but each has their place.
For sure. I would say for myself, when running the game, I tend to be like a 75-25. I want to keep the focus on the story, keep kind of a serious tone, because I do like to create those epic events that kind of get people's heart pumping and get people's anxiety going. But there's always time to work in some humor and just always remind us that we're all here collectively together. We're having a social time. We're having fun.
It's like in one of Dan's games, you know, I wouldn't bring in a Kender type character. If anybody remembers the old Dragonlance, the Kenders and such. Whereas one of my favorite characters in a game that I ran was when my wife ran a Kender, who just completely ran amok. And I love the whole just everything going amok factor of it.
Well, I love how Sean took a halfling and just made him a Kender in our early Homeland games, because he was like, well, if there's no Kender here, I'll just play a halfling and pretend like he's a Kender, and the legend of Bizzo was born.
His Jolo Pulls the Bow was a good character, kind of in that reign. It took almost a cartoony and comic character and made it serious, and I really liked that character.
Oh yeah, I do respect that Sean can kind of play all ends of the spectrum. He can play one of the more serious kind of characters, a fighter, hack and slash, a hilarious bard kind of character. He kind of runs all over the place.
Yep. And also, I mean, you know, bringing different characters to different types of games, you know, like currently in the Baldur's Gate game, I'm playing a paladin, so I'm trying to play it as seriously in character and out of character as I can, so I don't throw out as many dad jokes. But when I was playing Denshar, you know, the assassin, you know, the sky was the limit.
Yeah, for sure. I think for the most part, you guys are kind of versatile in your character selections. James, on the other hand, and this is not a knock, but we can generally count on him. He's old reliable. All right, so we know that James is going to play the tank, the fighter, somebody that's going to get up close and personal, or just kick all kinds of ass with a gun.
Hey, don't forget Nilrem Oasis, his wizard.
I typically replace that memory with the memory of the wizard character he created for our Hackmaster game, when he accidentally overlooked the arcane spell failure rules from 3.0 and he was playing a wizard fighter decked out in full plate armor, and he went to cast his first spell, and Larry said, well, what's your percentage chance of failure? And he goes, what do you mean? And he thumbs through the book. He's like, see, you're wearing full plate armor. It's 95% chance you can't cast any magic. And James is just, well, I just spent the last week building this character. And that I always think of that Hackmaster, and I'm always reminded of, I present the idea to Jason and Larry. I proceed to just watch them throughout the evening, creating their characters, battling them back and forth, discovering what works, what doesn't work. I'm tired. I go to bed. I wake up the next morning. I still hear dice clacking, and Larry's like, nope, that didn't hit me. My armor class is a 54. And Jason's like, man, I think you've created the god character. That's the one you should roll with.
That was his vampire swashbuckler, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it was. / duelist, because he was getting AC bonuses from dexterity, from intelligence, from pretty much every attribute.
Yeah, those were the times where the game was severely broken, that they didn't have a thing called like stack restrictions like 5e does now.
They do have restrictions in 3.0, but then they go out and give you 30 different sources that you can stack together, so it makes it kind of a moot point. Now, our second question was the one that I put forth, and this is kind of a lead-in for where we're going to be week after next. We're going to be returning to Agent Orange, our 1970s zombie apocalypse, and if you're wondering why the music is a little different tonight, that's also in the same respect. I found some kind of groovy 70s tunes on Epidemic and decided to kind of tool around with them and see how they will fit our experience. But in the context of zombie apocalypse stories, what is your favorite zombie apocalypse tale? Whether it's a TV series, whether it's a movie, whether it's a novelization. I'm going to start off with Evil Dawn here.
Well, it may not be classified as a zombie movie, but Evil Dead has to be one of my favorites. You know, I mean, you've got the Deadites, and so that's close enough. They're like demons, you know, they're Kandarian demons, but they're more zombie-esque, you know, in that same genre. And then, of course, you know, you have the movie, you have Army of Darkness, which is another zombie part of it. And out of the trilogy, I think the Army of Darkness hit it the best.
How about you, J-Man?
That's an interesting one, because there's a lot of good ones out there, and they all have a slightly different take on, you know, what a zombie is, what a zombie can do, how you defeat them, all that stuff. Like going back to one of the originals, Night of the Living Dead. I think we watched that the other night. They were very slow, easy to shoot in the head, afraid of fire, only came around if you got bit.
And they use tools.
That's a lot different than, say, Dawn of the Dead, where they ran. And, you know, you still had to have a bite to become one, but they weren't afraid of fire. So it's like, then you got, you know, Walking Dead as more of a modern one, where anybody who dies becomes a zombie. So there's a lot of different takes out there. As far as what I liked best, it depends. I mean, there's some ones that are more comedy-based, which are always fun to watch, like Shaun of the Dead. And then there's, as far as ones that are
Zombieland,
gripping and suspenseful, things like 28 Days Later, that was very gripping and suspenseful, because it was like, whoa, these things are intense. You know? Anyone where they run, it makes it just intense, because you're like, oh no. No running, no.
I think some of my favorites were, I think one of the earliest ones I really remember that it kind of, I enjoyed it, was the original Dawn of the Dead, back in the early 80s. And I really liked it. Now, we watched the remake the other night, and it was real similar, but there were some pretty big differences. The zombies run in this one. I don't remember them quite running in the original. But there's so many variations of zombies in the last 10, 15 years. We
Right.
got overrun, so to speak, with zombies, and the pop culture was just flooded with it. We even had Marvel zombies, and I think that came earlier, but there was just zombies everywhere. But Dawn of the Dead's probably my favorite, the original one.
I would explain the influx and oversaturation of zombie movies over the last decade or so. I blame it solely on the oversaturation of vampire movies in the decade prior to that. And during that whole vampire phase, I was just like, where's the zombies? Where's the zombies? Where's the zombies? And now I can live in this era forever. I don't need to see us go back to vampires or anything else. Zombies were always my favorite.
Well, what's also pretty interesting, do you guys remember a show, Deadliest Warrior? The very last show that they did on season number 3 was vampires versus zombies. And they did an entire test of vampire strengths and weaknesses versus zombie strengths and weaknesses. And in order to make it fair, they put like 300 some odd zombies versus 3 vampires just to make it even. And it's been out for a really long time. If you want, go and watch the episode. I'm not going to spoil it for you to see who won and everything like that. But it's just amazing how they tested the abilities of each fantasy creature.
I do respect that. I would guess that unless it's Jason Voorhees, I can't imagine a vampire ever losing to any zombies.
Well, I mean, because one of the tests that they had to do was they took a martial artist and they put vampire gloves on him and they sent zombies at him in a circle, on zip lines, these zombie bodies. And he had to knock him down to see how long it would take for him to not be able to knock down any more zombies before the zombies actually got to him.
Wow. Very nice.
Since you mentioned it, Dan, is Jason a zombie or is he something else like a revenant?
For me, it's parts 2, 3, and 4. He is just a mutated human. Not really anything supernatural about him. But once part 6 comes in and he gets struck by lightning and is revived, thereafter I always kind of view him as a super zombie. But a revenant would be very fitting as well.
I mean, would you classify him as, an intelligent zombie? Is there an intelligence behind him? Or is it just like a shark, a killing machine that it doesn't matter who, what, where, as long as it's within his range?
For the most part, he seems unintelligent, but then he does respond to his name. And for whatever reason, he doesn't attack children, whereas anything else, that's kind of his modus operandi. If he sees you, he goes after you. He sees a kid, he doesn't necessarily try to kill them.
I could just see a spoof with like zombie wedgie zombies, that don't try to eat your brains, that just try to give you a wedgie when they see you. They're all jocks and they're going after a school full of nerds, and it's just a thought.
What about you, Dan?
Well,
what's your favorite?
It tends to be the original Night of the Living Dead. But in a broader category, any context where the zombie apocalypse is told from a perspective where the survivors are ill-prepared, don't have any technology at their disposal, are stranded or trapped, don't know about zombies in a real-world context, because some zombie movies, zombies are part of the real-world mythos. In others, like Walking Dead, zombies don't exist at all, so it's kind of you learn as you go. I kind of prefer that strategy more than having an idea from the get-go as this is what this might be.
Anybody out in the viewing audience want to chime in on what their favorite zombie movies are, or zombie TV shows, or anything else like that?
Yeah, please do. And in the same context, the first question is not out of the realm of answering. If you want to pitch in what kind of gaming style you prefer. Do you prefer something that's more serious and focused on the story and real life considerations are far in the back, or do you like something that's a little more laid back and lax and more of a social gathering? And then, of course, our second question, as Evil Dawn said here, favorite zombie apocalypse story?
Now, another thing, though, and I think this might be a little off topic, but some of these zombie movies does bring it into light. Have you noticed that a lot of the 80s zombie movies / sci-fi movies focus a lot on boobs? There's always at least one scene of a lady getting out of a shower or having their shirt ripped or something.
Right. I imagine back then they had no confidence in their ability to carry the audience through with the story with just the horror. So they would always try to add in other aspects to keep people interested. Well, I'm not a big fan of the horror, but I know somebody's getting naked.
Yeah, it was always the we need to sell to the teens. They're the ones that are going to come watch the movies, so we need sex and violence.
And a lot of times it's at the same time. They're having sex and they get killed at the same time.
Oh yeah, especially in part 2, that's exactly what happens. They both get speared through while they're doing the deed.
Nobody swim, nobody have sex, and don't trip.
Definitely don't do any of that. And Justin brought up Mark earlier while we were talking about the Alien Isolation game that I streamed earlier. And anytime we start talking about Friday the 13th and Jason, I'm always reminded of his take on it and his joke of how Crystal Lake is really like a Mormon camp. But it's all the bad shit happens on one side of it. Imagine the story being told from the other side, where it's a husband, a wife, and 2 kids, everybody's well behaved. Jason doesn't mess with that side of the lake, because everything's fine. And then meanwhile, on the other side of the lake, everybody's getting butchered and slashed and hacked to pieces, because Jason has this high moral standard of, I smell weed, you're dead. Hey, you just took your top off, you're dead. What are they doing across the lake? Kumbaya, my lord. Okay, everything's fine over there. Kumbaya.
Or
I've actually played Nero at one of the parks where they filmed that up in Atlanta area.
So jealous.
And also, it's kind of funny too, especially since we are jumping into little topics, like how silly a lot of the sequels end up getting. Like, if you look at Nightmare on Elm Street, first couple, very scary, very terrifying, and then now Freddy becomes a joke afterwards. Chucky, he starts off very, devastating for the first couple movies, and then after number 3 he becomes a joke. He becomes super silly and everything else like that.
Yeah, for sure. After a while they just start running out of ideas. I mean, some of the Friday the 13th are obviously better than the others. In one of them it's not even Jason. In another one it's almost not even Jason. It's almost like Terminator 2 but told through a horror style, because he's constantly jumping bodies. So it's like Robert Patrick changing into the foster mother and then the police officer. First time I saw Friday the 13th 9, I was like, so they watched Terminator 2 while they were writing the script for this movie, right? Oh my goodness.
See, now, I'm sure a lot of people don't think about it, but I really like Jason X.
Oh yeah, that's a great one, I thought. I buried the alert box here with some of the newer features, so we may not have seen it, but Valtheris just did a Tier 1 subscription, so very cool, man. Thank you so much, Val. Are you with us? Now,
That's awesome.
We are 30 minutes into the show, and I feel like we can easily spend the rest of the time talking about the third and final question, and maybe perhaps get some audience participation here as well. If nothing else, why don't you take us there, Don?
Okay, so it started off as a little simple thing. Who would win, Star Wars versus Star Trek? However, there's been a book written about it. So, with the and Dan showed us the results of said book. However, what is your favorite, Star Wars or Star Trek, and what makes that one better than the other in your opinion? Go ahead, Dan. I'm sure you really want to be the first one to jump on this bandwagon.
I've actually never seen either of them before.
Oh, okay. Then we'll just move to Jason.
Well, I mean, anybody that knows anything about me, obviously, half the shows that I stream here, I'm wearing something Boba Fett. I have a Boba Fett tattoo right here. Half of my room is decked out in Star Wars. I like Star Trek. I love Star Wars. And I don't know if it's because I was exposed to Star Wars first, and Star Trek didn't come along till later. Star Wars just always seemed a lot more epic, a lot more adventurous, a lot more action-packed for me. And Star Trek, as a kid, there's a lot of lulls for a kid to try to keep their attention span. I appreciate Star Trek a lot more as an adult now than I ever did as a kid, but my love for Star Wars has always been steadily increasing since, man, I think I was 5 years old when Return of the Jedi was in the theater. That's the first one I saw, and I thought it was a horror movie. I don't remember much about seeing the movie itself, except running into my mom's room in the middle of the night because I was having a nightmare that I was in Jabba's palace, and Jabba and all the aliens and Darth Vader were just looking at me and that, oh dear God. But over the years, Star Wars has just it's been so fulfilling in my life, both as an entertainment venue, something for me to appreciate, but also the stories I've been able to tell in the context of Star Wars.
And just a quick note on here, Valtheris posted Star Wars is his favorite, but it's like not better than the other, but I prefer it because I remember it more. Both are good for different reasons.
Yeah, very true.
And I think what we're going to find, though, is that a lot of us, when we're talking about this, are going to have the same type of opinion. We like both of them because we're nerds. We kind of have to,
Yeah.
But what is a preference to the other one? And obviously Valtheris is Star Wars is his preference. So basically almost what I'm trying to say, and this one goes to you, Jason, is that if Star Wars was on TV or Star Trek was on TV, which would be the first one you would switch to?
Well, in today's age, that's a relative question. If we're talking like episode 9 as opposed to TNG, I'd probably watch TNG. However, if we have like episode 6 as opposed to original Star Trek, yeah, I'm going Star Wars. But, generally I prefer Star Wars to Star Trek. Now, again, we're geeks. Both are good. But when it comes to Star Wars, I enjoy the depth and what each little character is. It's not to say Star Trek doesn't have it. I've been to the tour and the ride in Vegas several times. I enjoyed it. Had dinner at Quark's many times. I just prefer Star Wars overall.
And how about you, Justin?
I would say overall, I do probably prefer Star Wars, but if I'm looking for a sci-fi fix, space, science, that kind of stuff, I go with Star Trek because Star Wars,
right?
They gloss over all that. That's never really talked about. Things just work. Computers just do their stuff,
or they don't.
We have a hyperdrive. We're not going to talk about how that technology works. It just does. We have lasers and blasters, and that's just stuff that exists. Accept it. Whereas Star Trek, they get into the science of it. And so if I'm feeling like I want more science, I'll do Star Trek. If I just want the action and the, like you said, the emotion over the logic, then I'll go with Star Wars.
See, I'm the third. I'm the one on here. I'm a little more Trek than Star Wars. I mean, granted, I love both of them. I like the stories. I love, the Star Wars thing. And in Dan, you theming your wedding on Star Wars, and the bachelor party was Star Wars themed, and the whole kit caboodle. This was many years ago, but for me, a lot of it is the Star Trek. A lot of it is the science. A lot of it is the different types of stories that you get. And Star Trek had that advantage because it was a series. It didn't have to try to tell its entire story in 2 hours. It was able to tell its story through 1-hour episodes over many, many, many years. So that's kind of where that advantage came in. And you have a bigger diversity of characters in Star Trek than you have in Star Wars. You never really got to get the feel of anybody else except for like Luke, Han, and Leia. You got a little bit of Vader in the first movie, in the first set, but not as much. Then in the second, third, you got a lot more Vader, but a lot of other people just kind of fell into the background of the whole thing. Whereas Star Trek has a lot of great focus on their individuals, and Dan's like biting his lip over there going, however, I did post this question to a local Star Trek group, and it's called the USS Windrunner, and this is an excellent organization. They do Star Trek themed community service for Las Vegas, and they do a lot of great things for that. And one of them, Rochelle, writes in, "I'm a fan of both. There is room to love both. Each bring a different things to the table. I appreciate Star Trek for its deeper intellectual reflection of humanity and shades of gray in good versus evil, and its heavy emphasis on scientific exploration and discovery, plus the depth of hundreds of hours of screen time by comparison. So many different stories and plots that allow fans to dig in a microcosm of the franchise. Klingons with their own actual language, for example." And then Beth, let me see here. "I like both universes and agree they are very different. In my humble opinion, though I find more Trekkies like Star Wars than Jedi like Trek."
It is interesting that a lot of the go-to that I see, at least in the answers that we have here, are the amount of content that Star Trek has over Star Wars. But I know that we are aware that that is being evened out at a very rapid pace with shows like Mandalorian, Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch, Resistance, Ahsoka's show, Obi-Wan's show. I mean, that's 8 shows within the last, 8 years. And I know Star Trek has a lot of shows and a lot of content. It's just interesting to see that now Star Wars is no longer this confined tale of the Skywalker family. We get to see all of the aspects of the galaxy from one end to the other. And I'm particularly excited about the future movie franchise to see just where they go now that we don't have the Skywalker family to kind of focus our stories on.
And that's the thing too, because Star Trek, has, again, as we said, a lot of content. They have a lot of new shows coming out too. They have Picard, the next season of Picard, the next season of Discovery. And I like how they change things up a lot in those particular venues. But I really agree with what Becky was saying here, is that she finds that more Trekkies like Star Wars than Star Wars people like Trek. Do you find that the case?
I don't know. I mean, I really only know our small group of friends, and we all like both of them. Just predominantly, we like Star Wars more than Star Trek.
What are your thoughts on the cosplay aspect? Have you seen more? Have any of you guys seen more Trek cosplays or more Star Wars cosplays? And what do you think about those particular things?
Well, I mean, when talking about that, you'd be remiss not to mention the 501st Legion. It's thousands of people dress up as stormtroopers and Mandalorians and whatnot, and do events and do all sorts of stuff. And I don't know that there's a similar organization for Star Trek.
Well, as I mentioned,
You know, I've been going to cons since, I don't know, the early 90s. I've seen a lot, and I mean a lot, of cosplay for both. And both had moments in the spotlight when new TV shows came out, when new movies came out. I think in an overall sense, Star Wars, I've seen far more cosplay because it's often more complex. However, when TNG came out, I started to see a lot of the new Klingon headpieces come out that were easily attainable. They were affordable, and a lot of Klingon cosplay came out. I remember when Men in Black came out, there was I was at Dragon Con, and there was a big group of Klingons that did a Klingons in Black crossover with their cosplay, and that was pretty interesting. But overall, I've seen more Star Wars probably than Star Trek personally.
you know, and looking over to the side here, you know, CJ is posting up, you know, it's like episodes 7 through 9. Unfortunately, I feel sick about them. Valtheris loves the Star Wars. His love from the Star Wars came from the X-Wing books. And then, as Valtheris was saying, Trek is easier in theory to do, but they are less iconic, if you ask me. You don't look at them and instantly know what they are cosplaying. And then CJ is saying in there, you got it, Star Wars cosplay 100 times better, no doubt. But I've also been to the local Star Trek convention, and you know, there are people there that go all out on their and they don't try to portray specific people. That's the whole difference. Is they try to be officers on various ships or jobs on various ships. Or one guy, he was dressed as Q, and I mean, his costume was perfect, you know, and it was the first Q costume with the big black headpiece and the red robes and everything.
Yeah.
And he also had the same personality as Q when he was walking around and talking to people. And I thought that was just absolutely amazing.
I dig that. Let me just trace back for me. It just popped into my head where my first recollection of Star Trek versus Star Wars was around episode 2, and I'm sure it existed before then. I'm sure there was heat between the different fandoms back then, but for me, this is my first exposure to it. You guys remember Triumph, the insult dog? They did a special with him on like Saturday Night Live or something, and he's walking the episode 2 line and just making fun of all the nerds about why are you here? How long have you been in this line? Darth Vader shows up and Triumph's all like, what does these buttons do? And he's like, that's my chest piece that helps me to breathe. And he's like, and which one of these buttons calls your mother to come pick you up after the movie is over? But then at the very end of this comedy skit that I thought was so funny, all of a sudden a car pulls up and frickin' Mr. Spock gets out and walks the whole line. Just this. That's all it was. That was my first exposure to Star Trek versus Star Wars. So for me, I find that more Jedi like Trek than Trek like Star Wars. That is the exact opposite of my experience, at least from the get-go. And maybe that has always kind of soured my opinion and maybe like, all right, well, yeah, if you're going to be like that, Star Wars is leagues freaking better. And here's why, damn it.
I do have to bring up though, and it's hilarious. You guys are gonna have to go YouTube it yourself and everything, because we were talking about this before we started the show and everything. The animated Jean-Luc Picard versus Darth Vader, and it is absolutely hilarious, you know. And it's like, you know, ooh, Jedi space magic.
That was
okay, Don. How about this question? Picard or Kirk?
I have to go with Picard. And the main reason I go with Picard is because he has more of a sense of responsibility. He actually is running the ship, and he's not the biggest horn dog in the universe. Kirk seems to just want to, get with, I mean, the Yeomans. Just if you watch now, okay, if you watch nowadays on how he interacts with the Yeomans, it's just, you wouldn't see that. You could not possibly see that today. Whereas Jean-Luc Picard treats all of his officers with respect. And, I like the fact that he has a much more depth of character versus Captain Kirk.
Well, tying back to our, the first question I asked is, when you compared OG to TNG, OG, the original series is more beer and pretzels, and the next generation is more serious story. Do you agree or disagree?
I would agree on that. I would definitely agree, because you've got more, the interaction between Kirk, McCoy, and Spock is so much different than, it's much more loose and lighthearted than it is between Picard, Riker, and Data.
I just want to pitch in as well. We did have a semi-answer in our Discord chat as well from Mr. Murtaugh, who plays in our Tuesday night games. And I feel like a personality preference, he's always expressed a preference for Star Wars over Star Trek, but he did mention on an in-universe level that he feels Star Trek has the edge technologically, but perhaps the space magic aspect of Star Wars might be enough to even it out. So it's a close contest, which is exactly what this book comes down to. I mean, of course, they're not going to have a Star Trek fan be appealed by this book and then have them get to the end of it and find out they lost 42-3. So it's a very close neck and neck throughout the entire book. It's a pretty well-written book, I find. Of course, it's just a matter of speculation and opinions, which is all any of this comes down to. I think we agree that we like both of the franchises for different reasons. We have preferences over one or the other for different reasons, and that's fine by me, man. Ain't no issue.
Well, it also brings up a really interesting question, too, and, I throw this out to our viewers as well. Could a lightsaber deflect a phaser blast?
In a similar context, I would like to know, can a Borg cube assimilate a Death Star blast?
Ooh, because you are looking at, the shields, the Borg cube, but we're talking the main gun, a planet killer of the Death Star,
Right.
That would be pretty interesting, because I would probably give it to the Death Star, because the thing can blow up an entire freaking planet. But the other thing too, though, is the planet doesn't have force shields.
Right. Nor the ability to acclimate. I mean, the first Death Star blasts the cube's up in smoke, but who knows what happens to the other cubes after that? I've always thought the Borg were my favorite part of the Star Trek franchise, and they would be the most serious contest if there was ever to be a merging of the two universes.
Well, the Borg are really the most powerful enemy that, the Federation has ever faced. And because of their ability to assimilate, because of their single-mindedness, because of the ability to the entire cube thinking as one, does give it a huge advantage over everything else.
Oh, yeah. And elaborate a bit more on the Borg. It seems that CJ doesn't have a lot of exposure to the Borg or their cube to be able to weigh in on this.
Also, here's an interesting question. What would happen if the Borg assimilated Jar Jar Binks? Just putting it out there.
Oh, goodness. The Borg are almost the exact opposite of the Yuuzhan Vong in the Star Wars expanded universe. So it'd be very interesting to see if those two clash. You've got one that's entirely reliant on biotechnology. Everything they use is grown or harvested and living, including their clothes. And then you've got the Borg that are essentially cybernetic hive minds, all subject to one control computer. And they've got this remarkable defensive adaptation where somebody shoots them with a blaster and the Borg goes down. All of a sudden, the algorithms that are present within all the Borg calculate the proper response, and then you try to shoot another one, and they're invincible to it because they've assimilated that damage type. Now you have to try and find a different way to take them out. It'd be very interesting to see Vong versus Borg.
I think somebody really needs to make that happen.
Well, how about this? Can a lightsaber take on a slug from, say, a slug thrower, like a regular firearm today?
I believe it can, they just cannot deflect it back because the slug is destroyed by impacting the lightsaber. That's one reason why a lot of Mandalorians like to use the slug thrower, because, hey, I might not hit the Jedi, but at least I know my stuff's not coming back at me.
That's actually in the Shatterpoint book, the one about Mace Windu. The resistance fighters he's going up against have slug throwers,
Right.
and he's able to deflect but not redirect.
Oh yeah, that was a great novel. All those Clone War novels were really great in the era before there was ever even the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars cartoons. Now we've got 9 seasons essentially of Clone Wars content to watch between the two series that flesh out so much story for so many Jedi and clones that you only ever get the briefest glimpse of in the movies. But back in 2002, 2003, 2004, when Justin and I were constantly speculating what's Episode 3 going to look like, we picked up a lot of those Clone War novels to just fill in those gaps and see what we were going to be in for.
You know, and CJ's posting up that he's going to check out some Star Trek lore after the stream. Yeah, because for us to try to explain the Borg in this amount of time would be really, really difficult. But as he also says,
I think I did a good job.
You know, with slug throwers hit a lightsaber, it blows apart into molten bits. And yeah, that's
Seems
exactly
to be
what
the
should
case.
happen when it hits a lightsaber.
Oh yeah.
Now, if I remember correctly, Dan, isn't the Death Star kind of a giant lightsaber in its own tech?
It's a kyber crystal powered source, so it does have the same foundation, I would think. It's just somehow transcended melee to range. And I don't know how in that aspect it makes it different, but it does seem to make it very, very powerful and capable of destroying an entire planet.
Well, isn't what makes a lightsaber because there's an energy field around the energy being produced, which holds its shape, which is why you have so many weird incarnations, is the word I'm looking for, of the lightsabers nowadays. You know, again,
a lot of the artwork varies too. You've got some of the artwork, like in the Clone Wars, it shows bigger, larger blade lightsabers, and then you go to some of the other artwork, and it shows thinner, more elegant blades on the lightsabers. And even in the movies, it kind of goes a little back and forth on that a little bit.
Who's got the coolest lightsaber?
I have to go with Obi-Wan. I like Obi-Wan's lightsaber.
I gotta say,
Old Obi-Wan.
Old Obi-Wan, okay.
I think for me, it's going to be Ahsoka's white lightsabers. They're probably my favorite.
Nice. Dooku!
Mine's lightsaber, this is bad motherfucker.
I tend to look at it from more of a utility stance, and I would not shake my head if Ezra's lightsaber was presented to me, because you got the best of both worlds.
Which one? He's had 3.
Well, the blaster / lightsaber combo.
Well, and CJ also said Count Dooku,
Yeah.
and I do like the slight handle grip on Dooku's lightsabers.
I'll have to show you, CJ. Actually, I think if you look in our Role Playing Unlimited Discord page and go to the 25 Years of Gaming History channel and scroll up, you will see Justin and I getting ready to go see Revenge of the Sith in full cosplay. I, of course, have the Boba Fett armor. Justin pulled off an awesome Count Dooku.
Yeah, I've done that costume a couple times, like Halloweens and stuff, and everybody that sees it is always like, "Wow, that's badass."
Nice.
Although
And
I really
before
want-
anybody else brings it up, I'm going to have to bring it up myself so nobody else can use it as ammo against me. Yes, I fell asleep in the premiere of Attack of the Clones.
Hey, Jason.
Now, granted,
Jason, your mic is cutting out, so let me interrupt you and just tell everybody that you fell asleep during the premiere of episode 2.
I would have expected Justin to go as a Wookiee, you know, as Chewbacca for a costume contest.
Do you realize how expensive the Chewbacca costume is?
And how hot it would be to wear that thing in May in Las Vegas, even in a casino, because, I mean, this is back, I always go back to this, this is back in the days before assigned seating. So Justin and I, like, we're getting there at noon to watch a midnight show. Jason and I, when we went to see episode 2, I think he was working on property at the time, but I stood there for 12 frickin' hours so I could be one of the first people to get in the theater. Oh, Jason froze!
I actually saw, and this shows my age, I saw the original Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, in the theater as a kid.
That's awesome. It was a full year and a half before I was around, and Empire, I was way too young, so Jedi was definitely my first one. But that's why I made sure when Episode 1 came out, I was there at the Texas station for the premiere, and I'll never forget the pop of the crowd, because I showed up in line all self-conscious, like, I'm not going to dress up in my Boba Fett armor. Nobody's going to be dressed up. I don't want to be the only guy in cosplay. And then I show up and everybody's in cosplay. So I immediately turned around and drove home, got my costume, came back, and I'm coming down the stairs to view the line, and as I come within sight, like, everybody just burst into applause because nobody else was there as Boba Fett. And I was just, like, so touched. I was like, oh my god, these are my people.
All right, Valtheris, you know, it was a good 20, almost 30 years before I was born for episode 4. It's like, great, just dig that dagger a little deeper there, Val.
Oh, it's always my video. How come I'm always the one that gets cut off in half? Man, this is not cool. Come on! Well, we did just about hit the 1 hour mark, so I guess we will call it a night right here before Justin gets cut in half as well. I don't know how many of us can survive this kind of grievous injury. So on behalf of Jason, thank you all for being here tonight, and I'll pass it on to Dawn and Justin.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot, guys, for joining us. Remember, again, next week is going to be Dan's trying to get himself into one frame or another. But next week for our Star Wars game, our Star Wars What If. And hey, Dan, do we know if we're going to do questions next week or if we're going to do another What If battle?
I think next week we will do another pair of What If battles and do the alternating sequence. Next week will be our last night of Star Wars What If for about a month. Once we get into October, we're going to spend the entire month of Tuesdays doing our zombie apocalypse, beginning to end. It will be a complete story in those 4 weeks.
Very cool. Have a good night, guys.
Hi, Jason, but good night, everybody. I guess Jason was offended by your comments, Dan. He had to leave. No, but yeah, it was a good talk. Good, thanks for coming by and giving your input there, guys. CJ and Val, good to hear from you and good to see what you thought on the whole situation.
We'll pass it over to you, Jason, to say your goodnight. I actually spoke for you, but I will let you now that you're back.
I'm going to say good night real fast just because my internet is unstable. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here all. Hans loves D&D. Thank you for the host. And Valtheris, thank you much for the sub. Catch y'all next Tuesday. Probably do some streams between now and then, now that I have my video game set up. Very good. So, yeah, catch you maybe even as soon as an hour from now. I might feel like playing some more video games. So, catch you later all. Have a good night. Are you with us?
Good night.